The streets of New York City pulsed with their usual chaotic rhythm. The honks of cabs, the distant roar of a subway train rattling underground, the murmur of conversations in 100 different accents. It all blended together into a restless hum. The kind of soundtrack that never stopped, never paused. Christian Bale liked it that way. There was something about walking through the city, completely blending in. He had no film premiere to attend, no interviews, no press obligations. Just him, the streets, and the cold air cutting against his skin. He wore a simple black coat, dark jeans, and sunglasses, moving like a shadow among the crowd. Most people didn't even recognize him. Good. Fame was suffocating sometimes. He exhaled, taking in the raw energy of the city. He had been in enough films to know how artificial sets could feel, how fake movie versions of cities were. But this was real. Then he heard it. At first, it was just a voice, loud, sharp, cutting through the usual hum of the city. Then laughter. Something about the tone sent a flicker of instinctual irritation through him. He knew the sound of casual street banter, of friends joking around. This wasn't that. This was mocking. Christian slowed his pace, his senses sharpening. Then he saw them, a group of 5 women, standing in a tight half-circle in the alley beside a graffiti-covered wall. Their bodies blocked someone, a lone figure pressed back against the bricks. Something about the scene made Christian stop. The women were big, not just in stature, but in presence. Loud, confident, aggressive. Their outfits were a mix of thick jackets, dyed hair, piercings, and slogan-covered shirts. The kind of people who didn't expect to be challenged. The person they had cornered, though, he was pathetic. Christian's eyes narrowed. The guy was thin, too thin. His hoodie looked 2 sizes too big, like he was trying to disappear inside of it. His greasy black hair fell in uneven strands over his forehead. His pale face had that permanently anxious look, like someone who had spent years trying to avoid confrontation. A weakling. Christian watched as the biggest woman, a broad-shouldered one with a buzzed pink haircut and thick-rimmed glasses, jabbed a finger into the young man's chest. "You think we don't notice guys like you?" she sneered. The boy barely reacted. He kept his head down, shoulders hunched like a dog expecting to be kicked. One of the other women, a redhead with an eyebrow piercing, laughed. "Look at him. He's not even going to defend himself." A third woman, the shortest but thickest of the group, stepped closer. Pathetic little twig. Christian's jaw tightened. The kid mumbled something, barely audible over the chill of the wind and the sneering laughter. "Huh? Speak up, little man," the pink-haired woman taunted, cupping a hand to her ear. The kid flinched. I didn't say anything." That made them howl with laughter. Christian had seen a lot in his lifetime. He had played a psychopath, a billionaire vigilante, a con artist, a drug addict. He had researched real-life criminals, trained in combat for movies, traveled the world. But there was one thing that never changed, one thing that was consistent everywhere. It was that bullies always picked the easiest targets. And that pissed him off. Christian didn't speed up. He didn't need to. He kept his stride slow, deliberate, controlled, as he approached the alley. His movements were calculated, like a predator deciding exactly how much effort it would take to tear something apart. The women didn't notice him at first. "You ever talk about us again online, I swear to God," the pink-haired woman started. Her words died in her throat. Christian stepped into the alley. The moment he did, the energy shifted. He didn't say a word. Not yet. The kid noticed him first. His red-rimmed eyes darted to Christian, but he looked away immediately, as if already expecting that he wouldn't help, as if expecting no one would ever help. That irritated Christian even more. The biggest woman turned, confused at why someone had just walked into their little playground. Can I help you?" she asked, voice thick with attitude. Christian finally spoke. His voice was calm, collected, the kind of voice that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. 5 of you against 1. That's a fair fight, yeah? Silence. Then a scoff. The redhead rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, seriously?" "Seriously," Christian replied. Pink hair narrowed her eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Christian pushed his sunglasses up onto his head and grinned. "Oh, come on. You recognize me, don't you?" The short, Stocky woman squinted. Then her expression shifted. Wait, she muttered. Yeah, Christian said. You know exactly who I am. Nose ring tilted her head. Wait, is that? Pink hair snapped her fingers. Christian Bale. And just like that, the entire power dynamic in the alley shifted. Christian could feel it. They weren't laughing anymore. He could practically see the gears turning in their heads. Should they back down? Try to play it off? Act like they didn't care? Christian Bale wasn't just an actor. He was Batman. He was Patrick Bateman. He was a guy known for losing his temper and throwing actual fists on set. Pink hair crossed her arms, trying to recover her composure. Oh, so? What? You think you can play hero today? Christian's smile widened. You don't want me to play hero, he said. Trust me. There was something about the way he said it, calm, slow, edged with something sharp, that made the women shift on their feet. Even the kid looked up now. Christian turned to him. What's your name, kid? The young man hesitated. Mark. Christian nodded slowly, then looked back at the group of women. You got two choices, he said. Their faces hardened. And just like that, the tension in the alley boiled over. The air between Christian and the 5 women was thick with a strange kind of electricity. They weren't backing down, not yet. But the way their bodies had shifted, the way their laughter had died down when they recognized him, it told him everything. They weren't as tough as they wanted to be. Christian could see it in their eyes. Pink hair tried to hold her ground. So what? Batman thinks he's going to swoop in and save the day? Christian smirked. Something like that. Mark, the pathetic excuse for a man who had just been taking their insults like a sponge soaking up filth, stared at the ground. He looked like he wanted to disappear. His entire posture screamed, please don't make this worse. Christian glanced at him. You enjoying the view of your own shoes? Mark flinched. The biggest woman stepped forward. Her presence was imposing, but Christian didn't move. She had a bulky frame, shoulders that could knock over a lesser man, but Christian had spent years training. He'd sparred with fighters, built himself up, starved himself down, transformed his body for roles. He wasn't intimidated. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, she spat. Christian raised an eyebrow. Oh, yeah. You're defending him? She gestured at Mark like he was nothing. This scrawny little troll? You don't even know what he did. Christian studied them for a moment. Let me guess, he said. He existed in a way that annoyed you. The stocky woman snorted. Oh, please. Pink hair folded her arms. He's been posting online. Talking about us. Talking about women like us. Mark didn't react. That was telling. Christian tilted his head. Did you, Mark? Mark's lips barely parted. I said something in a forum. It wasn't even. Pink hair cut him off. He said feminist spaces are toxic. Christian laughed. Not a chuckle, not a polite little scoff. An actual, entertained, couldn't hold it in laugh. The group bristled. What's so funny? Pink hair demanded. Christian wiped imaginary tears from his eye. Oh, just the irony of it all. You're standing in a dark alleyway, harassing some guy in real life because he made a post about how feminist spaces feel aggressive. His smirk widened. Thanks for proving him right. The redhead with the eyebrow-piercing sneered. Oh, you one of those guys, huh? You think women should just shut up and let guys say whatever they want? Christian looked at her calmly. No, I think 5 people surrounding one guy in an alley like a pack of wolves isn't exactly girl boss behavior. Pink hair's face twitched. For the first time, the power balance was shifting. Christian could see it happening in real time. The women had expected fear. Expected someone to apologize, to cower, to de-escalate. Instead, they got him. The short, thick woman let out a breath through her nose. He's just some loser. A weak little man who... Christian stepped forward. The shift in his stance was barely noticeable, but it was enough. The group tensed. Pink hair stepped back. Interesting. Christian grinned. You know what's funny? He said. You talk about Mark like he's beneath you, like he's not even worth respect. But I'll tell you a secret. He leaned in slightly. If I were him, I wouldn't be the one backing up right now. Pink hair's eyes widened. She hadn't even realized she'd stepped back. Her jaw clenched. You think you're scaring me? Christian shrugged. I don't think anything. I just observe. The redhead was nervous now. Are we seriously arguing with Christian Bale? He's probably just trying to make this some big, dramatic Batman moment. Christian turned to her. You want a Batman moment? His grin disappeared. His voice dropped to a low, gravelly whisper. Then I'd pick your next words carefully. The alley went dead silent. Mark actually shivered. The women? Uncertain. Because suddenly, this wasn't a joke anymore. Christian wasn't playing. Pink hair swallowed. You're not a hero, she snapped. Christian smiled coldly. I don't need to be a hero. He took one step closer. I just need to make you feel really, really stupid for picking this fight. The tension reached its peak. One of the women shifted her feet. The redhead crossed her arms but looked less sure of herself. Even Pink hair's breathing had changed. Christian could feel it now. The moment where they had to decide. Push forward or walk away. He stared at them. Waited. Dared them. Pink hair's lips parted. And then, we're done here, she muttered. Christian watched as she turned her back. The others hesitated, but the power was gone now. One by one, they followed, but before they could leave, Christian called out, Wait! They stopped. He tilted his head. You're forgetting something. Pink hair frowned. What? Christian turned to Mark. Apologize. Mark's head snapped up. Wait, what? The women were confused. Christian folded his arms. You've been letting people treat you like garbage all night, Mark. You want to stop being a weak little loser? Mark swallowed hard. Christian stared at him. Then stand up straight and tell them to apologize. Right now. Mark's entire body froze. His throat tightened. He looked at Christian, then at the women, then back at Christian. Come on, man, he muttered. They're already leaving. Christian sighed, then slapped Mark on the back of the head. Not hard, just enough to make a point. Are you a man or a doormat? Mark blinked. Something shifted in his face. He turned to the women, and for the first time all night, his voice didn't shake. Apologize. Pink hair stiffened. You serious? Mark nodded. Christian grinned. The women hesitated. And then, Pink hair let out a huff. Whatever, she muttered. Sorry. Christian smirked. The others followed. One by one, Mark nodded, and for the first time all night, he stood taller. For the first time that night, his back wasn't hunched. His shoulders weren't curled like a turtle retreating into its shell. His hands weren't stuffed in his pockets in some feeble attempt to disappear. He had just looked a group of people in the eye, people who had been tormenting him moments ago, and forced them to apologize. And it felt different. Christian saw it, but he wasn't impressed yet, because standing tall once, that was nothing. The real question was, would Mark keep his spine or curl back up the second the moment was over? The group of women had already started backing away, muttering their half-hearted apologies, shifting uncomfortably under Christian's sharp gaze. Pink hair was clearly fuming, her face a mixture of embarrassment and frustration. She had lost control of the situation. And the worst part? She knew it. You think this means anything? She finally spat, her voice still laced with bitterness. Christian shrugged. I don't think anything. I just watch people reveal themselves. Pink hair clenched her jaw. You're still defending him? He's just another weak, scrawny, pathetic little man who... Don't. The word cut through the air like a blade. Pink hair flinched. Christian hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't needed to. His tone was low, cold, controlled, and final. He took one step forward, and the group shifted. Let me explain something to you, Christian said, voice smooth and precise. Bullies, people like you, they never want a fair fight. They only go after people they already know won't fight back. They push and they push, but the second someone shoved them back, they fold like a cheap chair. He tilted his head, staring at her. And that's exactly what just happened, isn't it? Pink hair's nostrils flared. Christian lifted a finger. You already lost. Don't make it worse for yourself. The redhead scoffed. You think just because you're famous you can intimidate people? Christian smirked. I don't need to be famous to intimidate you, he said. Another cold silence. The power was completely drained from them now. They weren't the ones in control of the alley anymore. They knew it. Christian knew it. Even Mark was beginning to realize it. And that was important. The women finally turned, walking off into the night. Their steps hurried but forced to be casual. They didn't want to look like they were running away, but they were. Christian watched them go, waited, listened for any last words. Nothing. Good. He turned back to Mark. The kid was still standing straight. That was a start. But his hands? Still fidgeting. His eyes? Still darting away when Christian looked at him too long. Still too much weakness. Christian exhaled. You think that was enough? He asked. Mark blinked. What? That little moment of standing up for yourself. Christian gave a lazy shrug. You think that's it? You think you've arrived? Mark swallowed. I mean, they left. Christian's jaw tightened. This kid, he really didn't get it yet. Christian took 2 slow, deliberate steps toward him. The alley was quieter now, and without the women there, it felt smaller. Mark's shoulders twitched. Christian noticed. Still scared? He asked. Mark's face flushed. No, Don't lie, Christian interrupted. Mark shut his mouth. Christian studied him for a long, quiet moment. You think just because they walked away you won? Mark hesitated. Didn't I? Christian shook his head, chuckling darkly. No, you didn't, because they'll be back. Maybe not them specifically, but people like them. People who can smell weakness like blood in the water. They're everywhere, Mark. And if you think one little moment of standing up straight is going to make you immune to them, he took 1 step closer. Then you're dumber than you look. Mark flinched. That reaction? Not good enough. Christian sighed. See? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Mark stared at the ground again. Christian rolled his eyes. And there it is. Mark looked up, confused. What? Christian jabbed a finger at him. That stupid little habit. The second you feel uncomfortable, you look away, like a kick dog. Mark shifted uneasily. Christian snapped his fingers. Eyes up. Mark snapped his gaze back up. Christian nodded slowly. Better. He crossed his arms, taking a step back. You're a loser, Mark. Mark tensed. But Christian continued, I don't hate losers. I hate losers who stay losers. Mark exhaled through his nose. So what am I supposed to do? Christian smirked. There it is. The right question. Mark hesitated. So what's the answer? Christian shrugged. You build. Build what? Strength. Confidence. Presence. Christian leaned in slightly. You don't just exist in the world, Mark. You take up space. You make people feel you before they even hear you. Mark nodded slowly. And how do I do that? Christian smirked. You lift weights. You eat more than a cup of ramen a day. You stop slouching like the world is apologizing for your existence. Mark swallowed. You learn how to fight. Mark's eyes widened slightly. Fight. Christian's grin widened. Oh yeah, fight. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. I dunno, Christian grabbed his wrist. Not hard, just enough to prove a point. Mark tried pulling his arm back. He couldn't. Christian held him there. See, he said, that's the problem. I'm not even trying right now, and you can't move me. Mark exhaled, frustrated. Okay, I get it. Christian let him go. You don't get it yet, but you will. Mark rubbed his wrist. Christian watched him for a second, then nodded. You've got 2 choices, he said. You can go back to being a helpless little twig, just waiting for the next person to push you around. Or you can decide that this was the last time. Mark clenched his fists. Christian raised an eyebrow. Oh, there it was. A spark. Something alive. Mark nodded. I don't want to be weak anymore, he muttered. Christian smirked. Good, he said. Then don't be. The alley was silent. The bullies were gone, but their shadows still lingered. Mark stood taller now, But Christian wasn't impressed yet. You think that was enough? Christian asked. Mark hesitated. Didn't I? Christian shook his head. No, because they'll be back. Maybe not them, but people like them. And if you think standing up once changes everything, you're dead wrong. Mark swallowed hard. So what do I do? Christian smirked. You stop being weak. You lift. You eat. You fight. You walk like you matter. Mark nodded. Christian stepped closer. Hit me. Mark blinked. What? Hit me. Right now. Mark hesitated. Christian scoffed. See? Still weak. Mark's eyes darkened. His fists clenched. Then he swung. Christian caught it. Better, Christian admitted. Not good enough. But now, you've taken your first swing. Next time, you won't hesitate. Mark panted, but there was something different in his face. Confidence. Christian smirked. You're still a loser. Mark chuckled. Yeah. But now, you're a loser with potential. Mark grinned. For the first time, he felt strong. Christian turned to leave. Hey! Mark called. Christian didn't turn, just raised a hand in a lazy wave, and disappeared into the city.